Welcome to the Be That 1% podcast. I'm your host, James Silvis, mindset specialist and performance coach. And here on the show, I'm going to challenge you to think deeper, commit to greatness, and develop a stronger mindset. You'll hear stories from those who are living life on their terms, and you'll receive strategies that will help you level up. So the question is, are you ready to be your own 1%? Let's get started. Hey, 1% family, welcome back to the show. If this is your first time, welcome. And if this is your return visit, welcome home. Today on the show, we welcome back one of the first guests on the Be That 1% podcast back in January 2018. And that is Chase Spillman. I want to give you a little backstory on him, followed by what you can learn in this episode. And first of all, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, your ears, your energy. Chase and I met in 2012 working at Marquee Day Club in Las Vegas. If you have not been to Marquee Day Club, it is one of the more popular day clubs in the world. From there, I went on to Wet Republic, which it was arguably the best day club, picture a nightclub during the day, in Las Vegas, 117-degree heat, yes, very hot. And the world's best DJs, people half naked, drunk, out of their minds, crazy environments. Learned a lot from those types of spaces. But Chase and I met at Marquee, and while we were in the thick of everything, we talked about purpose, about vision, about our businesses, what we wanted to do in the future, and all the things that we wanted to create. And we've stayed in touch ever since. And we've both grown our businesses, our families, and Chase has actually grown his community. He has a farm community outside of Kingman, Arizona called Arcadia. And he'll talk a little bit about where that came from, the vision that created it, the work ethic that's gone into it, and all the components. Plus, he's a father, he's a husband. He's a founding member of a technology that provides a solution to the grand unifying theory that Stephen Hawking and many other great minds have been searching for. And he's a leader that just wants to inspire others to live a regenerative lifestyle. So we talk about those things, as well as some communication strategies for handling conflict, what he's learned through living in a desert, both in the mind, the body, and the spirit, and also what the world needs more of now more than ever. So without further ado, let's get to the episode. Chase, man, it's good to have you on the show, bro. Welcome.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I could say all the same things about you and our great time together and friendship, and just watching you and your family and your business thrive and grow together in such beautiful ways. I 100% believe that there is a higher force guiding you and your family, and I'm so excited to be here and to speak with my like-minded brother and fellow entrepreneur and father and husband and all of the great things that we all hope to have, in this life. We get to not only have that, but share it with others and encourage others that uh, there's a greater there's greater purpose out there, and family is definitely one of them.
Yes. All right. So we do some rapid fire questions here on the show. So I'm going to throw these at you quick and in a hurry. Let's start with the first one. Born and raised.
Born and raised Escondido, California.
All right. Recent, what's a philosophy that you live by?
How you do one thing is how you do everything.
Hmm. What is a recent book that you've read that offered immense value to you?
The Bible.
Yes, I can see that for sure. What's a piece of advice that you've received that has served you well?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. To put my faith first, to make sure that that's always the priority, to have a higher standard that we hold ourselves accountable to, kind of like a knight's code, or the code of old ages, where there was chivalry and valor and just a way of doing things that held society to a higher standard of living. That would be uh, the greatest advice that I've received recently.
Mm, beautiful. What does this world need more of right now?
In my humble opinion, God, more faith, more people willing to hold themselves to that higher standard of living and to live a virtuous life and know that we will fall short, and that we are all imperfect, but striving for that perfection. I believe society needs that. We
Hmm.
need to look towards something greater than our individual selves that holds us together in
Yes.
community.
Love that. Last question. What is a question you are constantly asking yourself?
How could I be more perfect? How could I how can I be a better father? How can I be a better husband? How can I be a better friend? How can I be a better community member? How can I be a better global citizen? How can I be a better human? That would be
Yeah, same. How can I get better? All
yeah.
right. So last time you were on the show a couple years ago, oh, 5, 6 years ago now, one of the things that we focused on a lot was how do you create a community? You obviously had a vision of creating a community where you live off the land, where everyone there has a strong purpose and the collective intelligence and strengths of the group come together to create an atmosphere where everyone is thriving. And I want to spend a little bit of time on that and then just kind of what's emerged from there, right? So recapping how this all started from the industry in Las Vegas, right, to now being in Arizona, running your own farmlands, your own community, and living off the land. Like how did that come to be, and how is it going?
That's a great question, brother. If you would have asked me a few years ago if I would be out in the desert farming, first off, being in the desert farming is a lot different than being in a climate that's more conducive to growing. But
Sure.
uh, that's kind of the crazy first thing. But I would say, my whole life I've always deep down inside I've had this compelling desire to want to create some sort of a utopian type society and I've always felt that that was possible. And I've always loved music and culture and realized that America was losing what its original culture was and uh, that we needed to be an example. There's a lot of people out there that talk about conspiracies and the government, and a lot of different things like that. And what I realize is I'm like, hey, you know what? Everyone's doing the best that they can do with the resources they have. I'm not going to be one of those guys, but what I want to do is be an example of what would it be like to live in a culture or society that put virtues at the highest level, that actually had a standard of living and a code of conduct that we all actually wanted to be held accountable to, that it wasn't actually something that was forced on people, but like an opt-in civilization, if you will, in which we could play this game of living virtuously and living connected in nature and uh, more of just a natural lifestyle of deep intimate relationships and connections with our friends and family and multi-generational living. And in fact, our country, when it was founded, compound living or family compounds were the norm for our civilization, in which you'd have large communities of families that would all take care of one another. You didn't have elderly homes. You didn't have, uh, what is it, people pass away, morgues and things like that.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, you would be buried on your land, with your family members and things like that. And there was just the family was responsible for their providing their food and their power and their water sources, and that all fell on the responsibility of that responsibility fell on the family unit to do that. And so I started realizing, looking around, especially at Marquee and living in Sin City, you watch humans being human, and you really want to call that good or bad. It's choices that lead us closer or further away from our goals and what we define as success in our lives. I do think that we could definitely get a whole talk just about what success could be defined as. and all of those things. But just observing society, I realized that society needs examples, and it's better to be the change you want to see in the world. As cheesy as that Gandhi quote may be, I've always lived by that. It truly is. It's like, how can I be the change that I want to see?
Hmm.
And so I was at one of our friends, Mary Liz, one of her meditations in Vegas, and I just went into a deep meditative state and just had this feeling of walking on the land and building this community finally. And something in me clicked. That was like, all right, like now's the time. And it was just this compelling spark that just ignited into wanting to make that happen. However, my wife, I didn't know if she'd be down to go move out to the middle of nowhere and leave her entire family and start a community from literally almost blank lands. We started off with at least a house um, that we had to fix up and things, but she surprised me with being gun ho about it, and having your partner in life be on board with your vision is huge. And so that's pretty much what started that. And then what kind of spurred the name was my wife was looking around, kind of looking at like, all right, what's Eden and like fun things that, tie back to living a natural life. And so we actually settled on the name Arcadia, which is actually a Greek version of Eden, which is the unfettered wild. And so it ties into this natural way of living that I believe, God intended for us, is to live in this natural state in accordance with what we call natural law. And so that would be where it all started. And then it was just her and I for the first few years. And then a whole team just kind of showed up, in the third year just through random organizations and things. And just one after the other, literally every month, a new person would show up.
Yeah.
And then that kind of created our core team, and really is what spurred the growth into building an entire village and getting into agritourism, um,
So
growing
what
things
do
in the
you have
desert.
now? Yeah, yeah. What kind of trees? What kind of plants? What does your water
Yeah.
look like, and how big's the team?
Yeah. So the team now is about 8 to 10 full time. And then because we live right off the I-40, we have so many friends. We're like an embassy hub off the 40. So as people are driving by, they always stop by and come for their deep philosophical conversations. A lot of people want to have those in their lives. And so
Yeah.
we've kind of become this emissary hub. But we have goats, we've got Nubians and little pygmies. We do our own meat here. We also milk our goats. So we do raw goat milk and goat milk products. We have microgreens. We have tomatoes and peppers and what we call a food forest, which is where you actually get into permaculture and biodynamic farming, which is where you start combining different aspects of farming. So you'd have like an orchard, and then you layer tons of wood chips, and then you build your own. You rebuild the soil and the microbial nutrients and things, and then the fungi, which creates the mycelial network and actually helps all the trees communicate better together and to share resources in the soil. And then you add in chickens to that. So we have a huge free range chicken area in our fruit orchard. And so they actually go around and scratch and eat all the insects that would try to eat our fruit for the most part. And we've got bunny rabbits. And what else do we have? We got dogs, Great Pyrenees Shepherds. They're incredible, big white fluff balls. They're like little white Cliffords running around everywhere. So we actually raise ranch dogs, because I was a firm believer, it's kind of a side tangent, that you should just adopt dogs. But when you're out in the country, your dogs aren't your pets. They're there to work. They're there to keep threats away from your animals. And so I realized you actually do need to have farm trained, ranch trained animals to help actually work on the land. So we actually do that as well. And we do agritourism, which is people come specifically here to experience the farm life. They come and stay in our cabins. They come and camp out, and they come and experience that lifestyle. But not only that, is they come and experience the communal lifestyle. Like, what's it like living with your friends? What's it like living with your parents next door? What's it like, when you have that, and there's all the fun dynamics that come with that, in addition
Yeah.
to farming in itself.
I love that. So you had this vision and it was super clear and obviously it sparked something in you that's like, I got to do this, right? Has there ever been before that or since that level of like clarity and or I got to do this?
It's funny because, there's a lot of, I've been building businesses since I was 15 years old, back reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, going to all the real estate seminars, going to stock seminars, trying to figure out like what I wanted to do with my life. And I'd ask a lot of those billionaires and millionaires, what their lives looked like. And to my surprise, it wasn't the lifestyle that I was looking for. I've seen a lot of people putting their business before their families and putting the money making before their faith and families, and realizing that that's not how I wanted to live my life. And I thought business was going to be this thing that was so consuming that it would consume my entire life, that I wouldn't be able to have the family balance life based on what I was seeing. Not to say that there's successful people out there that do have it all, but the majority of what I was seeing was that. And so, I would start businesses. I started a nonprofit, and then just the inspiration of like you get the spark, I follow through with it, and then it would just fizzle out. I get a spark, follow through with it, and it would fizzle out. And so it kept happening in my life. And this was the first time that it was a very clear spark. It ignited, and the fire's never gone out. The lifestyle and the rewards of the life that I get to live now are so extraordinary that I don't seek anything else. It actually helped me be what we call all in, an all in life, an all in mentality of just being all in on a mission, a vision, a purpose. And when you have that, I believe that's when the Bible talks about one mind and one accord. I believe that's what it's referring to as a group of people that come together, all in the same mindset and the same focus and that same vision. It allows you to do things. It almost allows you to time travel in a way, because you're able to do things in a short period of time that would normally take people years to do. You're able to just to dive in because you're living such a present life, because you have to be. You have to be present with all of your animals. You have to be present with your plants. You have to be present with your community members and their needs. And so it really forces you to be present. And when you're in that present state, I believe that's the flow state of consciousness that a lot of people talk about, or are trying to achieve in their lives. It's where you're able to just accomplish so much, so many things in such a short period of time. This is the first time in my life that I've ever experienced that, and it's really extraordinary.
What do you think the farm or having a farm, having something to take care of, a piece of land to take care of with all that you've mentioned, what is it that teaches you that nothing else can, or very few things can?
Yeah, it's a when I when I came out here, part of my challenge for myself was I wanted to learn. Like when I was in the city, I don't know where my power comes from. It's like magic, there's outlets around, you just like plug something in, there's power, and you don't think about where that power is coming from. How's it generated? How does electricity work? Water, the same thing. You just have water coming from the city line, and there's just water, and you just assume there's a factory that's handling all that stuff. You really don't think, further, and you don't have the responsibility to. Same thing with farming and things like that. You don't really. I mean, you can raise some house plants, but you're not farming on a massive scale. So, coming out here, I have learned all the skills that I don't now need to rely on having a handyman come to my house. I put myself far enough away, and now with YouTube, I can pretty much teach myself anything, because there's just all the resources are there, and if you can follow simple, basic instructions, you can achieve so much. So I would say, coming from the city to the country, I've become radically self-reliant, in the sense that if I have a plumbing issue, I know exactly what's going on, or I can research it enough to where I can figure it out and fix it that same day if I need to, or, putting in my own solar system and getting into regenerative energy and learning how can we actually, so there's the talk about sustainability and regenerative. Sustaining isn't enough, in my personal opinion. I believe that we as a human society, or as humans working with nature, when we work in nature and we work in harmony, that together we can create things that are far greater. And that's what I've learned too, leaving the city and coming to the country is nature wants to work with us. It's everything out here. The land it wants to thrive. It wants to be regenerative. It wants to produce more to sustain all of us. And so, when we talk about people talking about scarcity of resources and things like that, I've never been in that mindset because being out here, I can see the abundance. I can see everything wanting to thrive and to provide for humanity. And yeah, I didn't really get to see that too much, in the city because it's just different.
Mm.
But I would say all the skills that I've learned have been because I chose to move out here to the country, and it's forced me to have to be uncomfortable and to learn everything because again, you're completely reliant. When the power goes out, I have to figure that out. Water issues, I got to figure that out. Plants are struggling. When I say I guess I should be saying we, the community, have to figure these things out and to care and provide and tend to all of our animals. And we deal with the elements, of crazy storms blowing through and could wipe out a crop, crazy infestations that can come through and, wipe out things. And so you're really at the mercy of God or nature. And when you have that, it really has shifted my lifestyle tremendously and how I think and um, how I take responsibility for things.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is helpful for any person to do, especially if they're like if they have a lot of anxiety or stress or just worry, is to get out in nature. And that could be as simple as going for a hike, or that can be something like coming to your community and spending a couple days or a week, which is something that Amanda and I did back in 19, I think. We spent New Year's
Yeah.
with you guys, and there's something about being out in nature that reminds you of like where you come from or what's important, right? Because it quiets down the noise that a city life or just the American culture or the Western way of thinking brings. It's always like, do more, more, go, 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 faster, faster, and there is a lot of beauty to that. I mean, I believe that growth is essential. It's what aids in our purpose and our happiness, and it's better than not growing, right? But with that, we can quickly get lost in either why we're doing something or remember why we even started in the first place. And it isn't until you slow down enough, oftentimes by getting in nature, that you're able to reorient, you're able to refine, you're able to reflect, you're able to maybe even change courses. Like maybe you've been 2 years too long in something, and it isn't until you sit in the silence that nature offers, which is not really silence, but a different type of
It,
noise,
it is. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's a different noise for sure.
Yeah, that you're able to find or re-spark that clarity that you once started with, and that can blossom into something beautiful. And so it sounds like that's what you get exposure to daily, and in a consumption rich culture, being in nature is all about what do I need to give? What do I need to create? What do I need to, and that's part of the regenerative part, right? It's like, what part do I play in the co-creation of how we can make this planet a better place? And you don't get that stuff in the city or just in a busy
Oh,
lifestyle.
yeah. I would say that, and again, there's always exceptions to the
Sure.
rules, but we obviously we take what we see in the majority, and the majority of society today, you have anxiety, depression, mental illness, a lot of uh, a lack of intimate connection. And when I
Hmm.
say intimate, I mean intimate is different than sexual connection.
Absolutely.
Intimacy is this deep connection that I believe that humanity is wired for. And when you're out in nature, it really helps to one ground you into the present moment. Because a lot of us were either living our life in the past or living our life in the future. It's what are we aiming for, or reflecting on what did I do wrong, or something like that. And what that does is it pulls us out of the present moment. And what I found living in nature, that the past, present, future almost all run at the same time. It's like what we're choosing now is immediately reflecting or influencing our past and our future in some way. I think the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once can talk a little bit more about that. But I would say this is that all of my friends, after living very complex lives and going after multiple businesses and going after the American dream and just constantly just stimulating and stimulating and stimulating, that a lot of us have uh, moved to more of a simple lifestyle, and simplifying our life, simplifying the amount of choices that we have to make in a day. And, for me, waking up and having a routine, like going and feeding the chickens and going to the greenhouse, making sure the greenhouse is good, and like just having that simple routine, it's like life in nature is a lot simpler because it's just feeding yourself, taking care of the animals, making sure everything's nourished, and then there's just time to talk with community members and to talk about what businesses that we do want to create that can have the greatest impact on people's lives. And you can go into a creationary state and a flow state of consciousness so much easier, when your mind is quiet and
Hmm.
you're just still with the land, and that's why I think the desert is so special, and why and enlightened leaders of our past have spent a lot of time in the desert, because there is less noise. Like a forest, you have all the sounds of the creatures and there's just so much life in a forest. When you go to a
Mm.
desert, everything's still, everything's quiet, everything's conserving its energy
Mm.
because it has to in order to survive. And so being in a desert environment really creates a level of peace and stillness that uh, just helps you really focus and be able to solve problems at such a fast rate that I've never experienced before. So, anyways.
That's cool. Yeah, I never thought about it like that with the noise. Like I'm thinking about the Amazon jungle where there's like not a dull moment. Like there's always something happening. Usually from the birds and the
Oh yeah.
monkeys and these like louder animals, but in the desert, you're right. There it's just wind
Yep.
mostly that you're hearing. Maybe the occasional hawk or like the rustling of a tumbleweed off in the distance, but for the most part, pretty silent. That's very true.
Yeah, so there's something
Wow.
to it. I have to say the desert does bring a certain level of enlightenment. And then the elements as well, learning how to work in the heat and to adapt to that, and um, how to build your lifestyle around the weather, because you want to make sure to conserve as much of your energy as possible. So having to wake up earlier and take a siesta in the middle of the day and then have another shift in the evening, in the summertime, you have to kind of, adapt your lifestyle to the land, which is a lot different in the country. Whereas the city, we're so used to AC and not having to be outside as much. It definitely, you as a human learn how to adapt to the land and don't force the land to adapt to you.
Hmm.
So it's a much different mindset. When we go into cities, it's just like, let's just build a high rise here. Let's just develop and not really think about the land that's underneath it. It's just develop and let's grow for the sake of growing. We got more people coming here. We need to grow. Need more housing, need more this, need more shopping malls, need more of these things. And it's like, I think that that's a lot different mindset. When you're out in nature, like your goal is to be like, okay, well, what's the minimum amount of infrastructure that we need to actually live? So it's a lot different mindset versus just the sake of growing for the sake of growth. It's
Yeah.
you're a lot more calculated in the choices that you're making, and how you grow.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah, that's great,
fascinating how
man.
everything's tied together.
And so being a father with all of this and also a husband, what's been what's been a challenge to work through that's been very rewarding from a extracting wisdom standpoint?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say because nature dictates the lifestyle of a farmer, it means that, and I would say nature is also a form of God personally, that would be what would be considered like my faith, it would be based in natural law and in wanting to serve nature to the best of my ability. And so the farm or the community will usually take precedence even over, like, if my wife, and even my son sometimes, if there's something I got to do electrically, or the farm needs me to do something, or an animal needs care, or anything like that, I will have to go and tend to that, over my own family's needs. But the thing that's beautiful about that is the lifestyle that we live and the peace that we've obtained in our family, and our community. It allows my wife to not necessarily put all of her needs on me, because now we have a community. So I don't have to be everything for my wife.
Mhm.
I think that's a
Nor
big
could
thing,
you.
in relation. Nor could I, right? Nor could I.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is how do we help our partners, sustain a lot of the things that they need for themselves outside of needing it from me. Not to say that I don't provide a lot of those things, or that I don't love to provide a lot of those things, but it is very refreshing as an entrepreneur to have a partner who understands the level and scope of the vision and the demand of the vision, and has other community members that they can talk to and satisfy a lot of the intimate connections we need as a civilization, as a human
Yeah.
race. You're able to source that from community, which allows me to go out and do my things. But what I love is I get to walk outside my door and I'm at work.
Yeah.
So just think about this: how many people are driving to work every day, and how much does that add up to in time over years and years and years? It's a
Especially in
lot of
big
time.
cities.
You're talking thousands of hours. Especially if there's traffic and stuff. I mean, even if it was an hour a day that it takes, it's an hour a day times three. I mean, do the math, and that's your whole life. And so, what's really cool is being able just to wake up, go outside, and handle my business, and then come right back, and even be able to take my son and start showing him things. Now that he can walk around, yeah, I can show him how things work, and talk him through mechanics of things, and even driving around in the ATV. Like, now he knows how to start the ATV at 2.5 years old. It's like, he can start things. He knows what's the acceleration. He knows what the shifter is. Like, he's been in a tractor. He understands what the little controls and things do, and watches us milk the goats and knows where his milk is coming from. And he's watching me as I'm doing things. And so as he gets older, he's going to be able to have so many of the skills that most of society doesn't have by the
Hmm.
time he's 5 years old. So would say that's the rewarding aspect, is I get to take my kid to work whenever I feel like it, and walk right outside my door, but to also have the support and the compassion of a partner who really understands the demands of what it takes to actually build a business. And
Yeah.
it's different being in a startup versus being in an organization that's very well established and has all the funding and things figured out. And just, there's a level of we call it being a prince versus being a king. When you're starting out a vision, you're a prince, you're building your kingdom. You're building the thing that's going to hold your vision. And when you're a king, I feel like you're finally able to kind of sit back in the throne and now be more of the oversight, and be able to look at all the different moving pieces. And then you have a people that you can delegate things to,
Yeah.
and trust that those things get carried out. And so I would say that definitely helps a lot, that we're as we move more and more into that. But we've done the research, and to truly run uh, a community farm model, you need like 20 people.
Yeah.
It's very taxing because you're pretty much your own little micro nation. So I know I'm getting a little bit off topic there, but
Yeah.
it's kind of multifaceted, because when you're in community, you have a lot of perks that not a lot of people have. If we need support with our child to, or my son to get babysat, his grandparents are right next door.
Hmm.
So it's just, we go literally walk, 20 feet, and ta-da,
Hey, did a
and then
favor.
now we can have a date night, or now we can have a night to each other. So it is nice, having community members around that can watch our son at any point in time. So if my wife and I need some time to talk through things, or if there's issues going on in our lives or issues in the community, we're able to have that time and space pretty much on demand, which is great.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier, having, and that's why I really believe that it's a village that raises a child.
How do you handle the social aspect of living there? I imagine, you have friends from a lot of different places, and you're seeing the same people every day. What do you do to keep either those relationships fresh, or like when you want more? I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, but like
Yeah.
having more friends outside of that environment? How do you go about that? How often do you see them? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, this kind of goes back to being an emissary, or being like a hub, off the 40. Our goal is to have as many friends as possible come through here all the time because we see the benefits of this lifestyle. We see the benefits of deep philosophical conversation without judgment. We're really big on conflict resolution and just good, healthy debating, which I believe is something that is a lost art in today's civilization, at least in America. I believe a lot of people are polarized, and that makes people feel unsafe to talk about deep philosophical concepts and just life and humanity and why we're here and what are we doing and what's the greater focus of our human civilization. A lot of those conversations are hard to have because of, I would say, the current political environment and because of a lot of the anxiety and depression and things. Although I think that's a byproduct of the lack of intimate connection that a family normally provides. Being out here, it's amazing to have my wife be a stay-at-home mom. Because I believe it's a great gift, and I just feel like society has uh, made that difficult to happen in these days. It's like both parents are kind of having to work, or it makes a woman feel like she has to go and get a job to feel equal to a man. And so you start getting into these roles, when you get out into the country of like, oh, wow, like this is actually really nice. And my wife was like, she never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And now she's found more joy and peace and surrender in that. And I know plenty of other of our friends who are women that also desire to be stay-at-home moms and talk about the shame and guilt of that in their lives. And so it is awesome to show our friends and especially couples that, hey, like this is another way of living, that there's city living and you can take a lot of these principles and things that we're doing here and still bring that back to the city, which is great. But the intimate connection parts, we're really big on studying all the different spiritual texts around the world because, there's billions of people and the majority of those billions of people, they still have some sort of a faith-based system that they subscribe to. And so for us, it's really important for us as an emissary and a hub for all of these cultures and all of these faiths to be able to come in a non-judgmental atmosphere for us to study and meet all of these people where they're at. And so we do go into deep philosophical studies on the Tao, the Quran, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, uh, and just countless spiritual texts. So that way we can be a relatable place for when people do come here, that it keeps us multicultural, that we can greet people in their own tongue, and that allows us to then immediately when people come here, they feel right at home
Mhm.
because they're like, wow, these people have taken the time out here in the middle of nowhere to learn about us, and so I think that really does create a level of intimacy and connection right up the gate that people can like let their walls down and to really surrender. And then us being so close with each other allows all those people and our other friends and things that when they do come or our family members, when they do come to feel that deep connection
Yeah.
and understanding that, oh, wow, this is what living in nature actually like this is what it this is the byproduct of it because it's an intangible thing until you experience it.
Mhm.
It's like we can talk all day about farm communities and about building things and about building all this and that, but until you come and experience it firsthand, it's just this idea in our heads that hasn't been experienced yet. Um, and so when it comes to the socializing, because we're in these constant, deep philosophical conversations all day long, when we're studying all these different texts and we're talking about life and I mean, there's every single day we're having these profound conversations, and that's
Yeah.
what I think nourishes not our soul, nourishes our minds, just nourishes that deep desire for deeper understanding of
Mhm.
life in general. And so I feel like when you're constantly growing as a entire community, and everyone here is so growth oriented, uh, that it keeps everything fresh. There's not a dull moment because you're
Yeah.
just constantly in that creationary, inspirational state of being, that there's always something to talk about. And even
Mhm.
if there isn't, you can learn to love the silence. I think that's another issue in society today is I've had people come out here that literally cannot sit in silence. Like silence is almost a threat to their existence, it feels like. It's like they constantly have to be stimulated. It's like there has to be music, there has to be a TV on, there has to be stimulation. And I think that's just what's happening in society is especially in cities. Not saying it doesn't happen in the country too, but because there's this constant instant gratification that people are searching for, that's actually, when we talk about entrepreneurship as well, and sorry if I'm getting off topic, is entrepreneurship requires delayed gratification. To create a family, it needs that delayed gratification. It's, I have to put this off now so I can enjoy these things later. And I think that is something in society that is lost. Where a lot of people, they're talking about living from their passion, or living for the moment now. And it's like, yes, but be very careful with that, because if you're doing everything to just for this present moment, you're going to lose sight of how are we doing things for our future generations. So a lot of our, a community, we're thinking about at least 2 to 7 generations from now. And we're willing to make a lot of compromises that maybe other people wouldn't. Like we don't go to the movies very often. Instead, we bought our own movie theater here. We try to bring things here so it keeps us from having to go out and spend all this money going to these spaces, and be smart and create a hub in which everybody can come here and feel at home and at peace, and to create the lifestyle that you don't need a vacation from.
Yeah.
You know.
I love that, man. I want to go back to the articulation of the vision, because I think a lot of people in relationships may have what you were describing earlier about wanting to start what you're building, and they may get excited, and then they're like, but I don't know if my partner is going to be on board. And if I do tell them, there's a chance that we won't be together, or there's a chance that they'll look at me different, or there's a chance that I may give it up to stay in the relation, all kinds of things. What was your strategy, and what was your thought process leading up to it? And walk us through, like, if you were to create on the spot, like a framework, or I don't want to say a formula, a way of thinking about having that type of conversation, what would you say?
Okay, so just to get clarity, you are asking how can we get our partners to
How did
subscribe to
you,
our
yeah,
vision?
how
Or
did
how did I?
you share that vision with Susie, and was like, look, here's what's calling to me. I understand if you don't want that, but I feel like I have to do this. Like, how does that conversation go? I know I had that with
Right,
Amanda about
right.
how our relationship was going to be. And that was really hard, because I had to entertain the thought that she was not going to say yes. And that was
Yeah,
painful, because she was everything that I had dreamed about. She literally had every characteristic that I wanted in a woman. And at that moment, I was like, and if you don't want to be in a relationship like this, we have to end it now. And there's
right.
something said about standing firm for what you believe, and making it okay for them not to also want that. So, like, talk me through that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, first and foremost, I never assumed that just because she agreed to support me in this vision, that it was her vision necessarily. And I think the conversation is even easier in today's landscape, if you will, or in today's society. I feel like people want change. People want something different. And so it's all about how are we packaging that, and how are we helping our partners get what they want out of our vision as well. So it's including whoever you're talking about in that decision making process, and letting them know and speaking from your heart, truly, like from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And, to be inspired, I think a good partner wants to entrust that in the I would say male dominant role in the relationship. They want to subscribe to that uh, level of leadership. Because as the man of the house, as that male figure in the house, it's up to us to be the leaders. And so the women will look to that guidance and that advice. And the more clear that we are with our vision. So that was first. I had to get really clear
Mm-hmm.
on what I wanted, and I had to be all in on it first. If I wasn't all in on it, it wouldn't have worked. I had to be so sold out that this is it. Because again, I told you I had nonstop businesses that I'd start, spark would fizzle out, move on to the next thing.
Right.
This was the first time that it was like it clicked. This is all in. This is what I want. This is the lifestyle, and this is how it's going to benefit our family. That's the biggest thing is for a woman, especially if you plan on having kids together. and you're now moving into, marriage together, is what's the greater vision of the relationship? And how does the vision that you have in your life tie into supporting that? And what I told my wife, very early on, was that, like, if I don't do this, I literally die inside. I will be a worthless man. Like, I have to lead something. Like, I have to, like, it's not like it's a choice. Like you said, it's like this, it's either this or bust kind of thing. And I think that naturally, in relationships, that I feel truly deep down inside that our partners want that they want that surety, in us, especially, if we're in that leadership role in our house, to follow and to entrust in that. And so, first would be getting clarity for yourself and being sold out for yourself, like being sold out on the vision. Like, there's just nothing else. This is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. And being okay in not knowing all the details.
Hmm.
Because you and I both know, as an entrepreneur, we can think one thing's going to go this way and then it goes completely this way. It's like,
Almost
that's
every
just
time.
that's just life. Yeah, almost every time. And that's where I would say being adaptable is really important too, and being adaptable to your partner's needs, and then also engaging with them in a way that they can feel a part of it. Like I said, so you have the clarity yourself on what you really want and desire, but then the clarity of how does your partner fit in to that vision? How are they going to benefit from it? How is the family going to benefit from it? How, even think into the future. How are your children going to benefit from it? Because when you can think into the future, and you can then you can both, as a couple, be like, okay, so it's worth these sacrifices if this is going to be the outcome. It's worth us going and living out in the middle of nowhere because these things could be the outcome. And so you're taking that sacrifice of, like, okay, we're leaving the city, we're leaving all the restaurants, we're leaving all the things that you can do in a city, you're leaving all the easy concerts and things that you can go to and all the ways that you can engage in a city because there's just so many activities, to kind of living I wouldn't say an isolated life, but it's a simple life. So we chose to leave a complex life, and not to say that our life doesn't have complexity to it, but to come back to this life where it is very simple. We literally live here. We just cook our meals, and everything is here that we need right here on the land. And we only really go out to the city now to go to a concert or something. And so I think that at first, our partners are excited about new ventures, and excited about new energy, and it's up to us, if they're not, to get them excited about that and get them in on the vision, and to help them start to visualize for themselves, to incorporate them into it. Um, and that's the same thing, not just for my partnership, but for everyone that's here. Everyone that's coming in here, it's how does everyone gain their needs met? Because your vision has to satisfy those needs, and it can't just be money. It can't just
Hmm.
be it can't just be a material thing, is what we realized early on. It's there's got to be a strong spiritual calling and foundation for a community to thrive. And in fact, the communities that I've seen thrive, that are very successful, are the ones that have a strong spiritual foundation, because there is a greater purpose to everything that there is in life. And so when your partner is in on that as well, and you have that strong spiritual foundation, it's very easy to see why living in nature and living in community is the greatest thing ever. And I think that, in the Bible, for example, when it talks about being all in on a community, and to be of one mind and one accord again, that's really what I think society is striving for. And if you look at all the greatest moments in our civilization, it's been when our country has rallied behind something, like traveling to space, for example. Everyone was at their TV set, super stoked and excited. Oh my gosh, we're going to space. In a way, that was kind of like a unifying concept, or a unifying thing that brought us together, and we just catapulted and excelled in that moment as a society. And then you look after the Great Depression, it was the building of the Hoover Dam. This is this huge monumental project that put thousands of people back to work. Everyone got excited about that, and it got the economy rolling again. And so you have these moments of, like, peak disparity, but then you have these moments that then also bring people together, and then there's hope again, and then there's faith again. And so I really do feel that faith is extremely important, an important part of the conversation of what are we going to gain spiritually, out of this vision and this venture together, as well as the physical benefits, like just our health
Hmm.
and wellness is just catapulted. My energy levels have gotten better as I get older, not worse, and so being in that natural lifestyle, you get the physical benefits and the rewards, as well as the spiritual rewards. And once you have that feedback loop, you have a positive feedback loop, everyone's all in. Like it's a no-brainer
Hmm.
because when everyone's all in and we're all building something together, everyone's constantly experiencing those deeper benefits, that I believe all of humanity is really looking for.
Yeah. In regards to the Bible, I know it's something that you said that you've read and
Yeah.
continue to read, and as well as other spiritual texts, but specifically for the Bible, who or what in the Bible have you really resonated with? Like, let's go with a leader. Like, who in the Bible have you read and you're like, man, I feel a lot of resonance with this leader, you know?
I would say probably King David.
Mm.
To think of, the pressure of running an entire civilization with the spiritual foundation. It's one thing to provide people's physical needs, provide for a people, but to have the burden, if you will, of representing God in your kingdom, that's a heavy weight, to carry. And to think about him going up against Goliath, you're this tiny dude and you're going up against a giant, with a pebble and a slingshot, or a sling. I think that's, in our life, that's every struggle that we come across. If we could look at that example of, like, look at those problems as Goliath, and you're David, and you've got a sling and a rock, and you're going up against this huge giant problem, right? And as long as your focus and your eye is on God, or this greater sense of purpose and being, this grand architect of this beautiful reality that we live in, when you have your eye on that and your faith is set, it's that all-in mentality of that you're set. This is your faith. Like you've completely entrusted into this greater divine architect, this great, sky daddy, or this great father, in heaven, if you will. And if you're focused on that and then what that affords and that covenant and that relationship, it gives you that strength that I can get through this problem, or St. George, conquering dragons. It's that same kind of concept. It's these are problems in our life that show up for everyone. And so what the Bible does, it allows us to step into these archetypal roles, put ourselves in these people's shoes that had immense pressure to lead a civilization. You're not just leading your family unit anymore. You're leading an entire, like, family of families,
Hmm.
and then you're trying to keep everyone in a morally compliant, uh, society. You're trying to keep people from destroying each other and keep people from going into scarcity, and to make sure people are actually being provided for, and to make sure that people who are widowed, because back then women didn't have an income. So it was up to the civilization to care for the widows and to care for the children. And so there was these codes, and there was these things that you had to honor, as a king, and these covenants and these commandments and these spiritual laws and principles and things that you had to uphold, and you had to also be that embodiment example. And I think the greatest thing about King David and the Bible in general is when you're reading it, you look at the compassion that God has for these kings and for these people, and the grace that he gives. Because even King David, as great as he was, he still fell into lust and fell into wanting to have multiple partners, and let different idolatry come in and influence his decision making, and didn't stay faithful to one, uh, being, or one God, if you will. And I feel like that's also, in marriage, it's staying faithful to that person. I know there's people out there that, are poly, and there may be successful people who are poly, but it really did show me why monogamish, or monogamy, in our relationship is so important, because it also is in our relationship with God.
Hmm.
is in that oneness. We talk about unity and coming together under one. Well, I believe that's what God is. God is that oneness that we are all trying to obtain, within all of our relationships, is that deep intimacy, is that I recognize you and I recognize me in you and you recognize you in me. And that's the oneness that we're experiencing. And that's what God is. It's that middle ground. It's that middle point in which we're all connecting to. It's like
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever seen a nodal network or a nodal map of just all these little things that are all connected to each other. And you'll find that, that's the unity or oneness of life and humanity.
Yeah.
Um, but
Uh,
sorry, I think I may have lost topic. That's lost track there. What were you
yeah, no, no, no.
ask
It
it
was
again?
it was King David. It was King David,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and what I hear there in all of that is a responsibility to the civilization, a responsibility to God, a responsibility to your significant other, a responsibility to the vision that you have for you or for others or for your family, and it's sacrificing in some way the moment to build something that you can't see or that is not yet here.
yeah,
And when I look around the world, or at least in America, I see people in some way foregoing responsibility or lessening responsibility, not accepting it to a degree that in which they can feel pride or feel challenged and grow as men, as women, as whoever, as a leader. What is your perception or perspective on responsibility collectively, and what's attributing to your observation?
yeah. We do live in a very polarized world right now, and what we call duality. And we can even cut it, right down as red and blue. Is the easiest one. Liberal and conservative is the easiest thing. You see this polarity, and coming from the city, I was more liberal. I was very liberal. I thought that liberality was the way, and just freedom. It's all about just freedom. And then I realized I'm like, nobody actually knows what they're talking about when they say freedom. Like the like I don't believe that that's the greatest pursuit of life, is to just have this quote unquote freedom. Now, of course, we can get into a defining of maybe what that freedom would be, but I feel like we want this freedom just to do whatever we want. People just want this freedom just to do what they want, and I was all about that. But then when I came to the country, because again, living in the city, it's like all my stuff's provided for. My water comes in, I just turn my thing on, it works. If it's not, somebody else fixes it. Power, the same thing. Like everything is just provided for me in a city landscape. So it's easier to lose sight of God or to lose sight of a higher purpose. Let's look at it this way. I define God as a governing, operating dynamic. God, God, governing, operating dynamic. And so in a city, we can kind of lose sight of that governing, operating dynamic in our lives because of the easiness and the comfortability that a city provides for us. Now, when I went to the country, it's crazy now. Like now I'm like, oh, okay, I have guns. Why do I have guns? I want to go hunting. And I also believe, hey, we live out in the middle of nowhere. We should be able to defend ourselves and have a good, healthy relationship with guns, where I didn't have that before. But when you're in the country and you're providing for yourself, you realize that, oh, I should probably have one. And I should probably know how to use it safely and use it with respect and to teach others around me the same, just in case we need it one day. Because you never know. A mountain lion could show up. What are you going to do against a mountain? You can wrestle it? Yeah, probably not. And so I started realizing that there's this duality, which is crazy. And then you have cities who are very blue, and then you have the conservative country. And then after now having the lens of both sides, now I find myself in the middle. I find myself in the purple party. You mix blue and red together, you get purple. And I really, in society, we polarized things. We try to separate,
Because
and
it's
then we
easier to
claim freedom
understand like that.
because of dichotomy, because of black and white. But
Exactly.
in our farm, what we teach people is learn how to debate things from both sides. Learn how to debate things from both sides, and then you'll have the understanding of the middle ground. And then what can you do? Now you can be a conflict resin. You can be part of conflict resolution,
Yep.
because now I can take somebody that's over here, and I can take somebody that's over here, and have compassion and love for both sides. Now let's keep in mind, in the Bible, God says God is love. In the Bible, it says God is love. And this is why we need to love our neighbors. This is why we need to care for each other. This is why we need to love one another. And what is that love? That love is bringing as a force that brings togetherness, not separation. And another thing that I've seen affect society and cause separation is the onset of the internet. Here's what's funny is we think the internet is this great tool that connects us more than ever before. But now people will communicate to one another in the most hateful of ways, it feels like, in the most disrespectful of ways, because you're able to hide behind a screen. And when you're able to hide behind a screen, you say things that you don't even mean to say. People just get mean with each other and they don't have the patience and the compassion and the love because there's not a human standing before them. And so I feel that it's really,
There's no
in society,
consequence.
yeah, there's no
It's like
consequence.
if
There
you
you
were to
go.
say half the things you say online to someone's face, you probably would get punched.
Yeah, you,
And
you probably
so,
would. I've watched it happen. We were in Vegas the other day and we watched it break out right in front of us in
yeah,
the middle of a CVS was walking down the strip.
right.
You watch people get to that breaking point and they will, eventually physically, could be a physical altercation. And so what
Yeah,
people do in person, you have more of that compassion
yeah,
because you don't want it to turn into a physical
correct.
altercation. Usually, if
Right.
you're in a pretty good mindset,
Yeah,
and pretty grounded, you usually don't want to have a physical altercation with someone. And so then there's consequences to those actions.
right.
But the thing is now that we don't have there's not really a standard in which humanity is subscribing to, or a code of conduct, if you will, or a
Mm-hmm.
set of virtues that keep us accountable. And now what I truly believe is that we all have that within us. I believe that's what consciousness is. Consciousness is that ability to discern right from wrong, to do good versus do harm. And I
Yeah,
really do feel that when we are present, that we have that ability to make those discernments. But when you're constantly being stimulated, and then you're constantly being stimulated with things that are causing division,
yes.
what's going to happen to you inside of you? You're going to get torn
Conflicted.
up.
Yeah,
You're going to be conflicted, and you're going to feel shame, guilt, remorse. That's going to turn into frustration. It's going to turn into feeling misunderstood,
mm-hmm.
and it's going to turn into a battle. And so I really feel that society today, it's a spiritual condition that is causing the division,
Yeah,
but it's also manifested in the physical reality in which we are in. When you listen to the music and you listen to certain things today, it's just like you can hear the division. You can hear the people like trying to separate and like draw lines and like I'm this way and this is how I'm always going to be, and it's like that's not the answer either. Although I'm convicted in my faith, God tells me to love and to have compassion and to be understanding and to be something that brings people together is my core operating procedure. But that's because I've subscribed to that. I've
yeah,
chosen to choose the higher ground to the best of my ability. Not that I don't fall short sometimes,
yeah,
but it's that we as a society, as a people, need to subscribe to a higher way of living, which is why personal growth, I think, is such a big industry. I would feel the shadow side to that is that people are just trying to grow for the sake of growing, and that you can actually grow your ego more than your spiritual nature, and that then you can hit people on the head with your personal growth books. I've watched it
yeah.
happen. Where you think that you're, morally superior than someone else, or because I read the Bible, and you see this with Christians in any faith, that there's a moral superiority. That's
Yeah.
not the answer either. The Bible says the meek will inherit the earth. That's what I truly believe is it's the meekness, it's the willing to humble ourselves to try to hold the middle.
Yeah.
In the yin and the yang, there's a separation.
Well, so a couple things. One, I think the people who operate with the idea that no one understands me, it's going to be easier for those people to isolate themselves and through the isolation further the division. And part of you being understood is learning how to communicate who you are to somebody else. So there's a level of ownership that one who feels like they're misunderstood has to accept in order to increase the odds of being understood. Number two is um the oh gosh, hold on one second. I had
Okay.
this thought. Um Give me one second here. Let's see. Oh, what you're talking about is the ability to think, right? Entertaining both sides. Okay, I hear what you're saying. Now let me see what this person's saying. That requires a lot of effort, and people nowadays don't seem to be able to, one, care to put that effort in, or two, don't have the bandwidth to put that effort in. And because of their lifestyle or what they're exposed to, their energy levels increase or decrease, right? And in the addiction literature, there's something called HALT, HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Those are the states of mind that warrant you going back to a behavior that you want to change for the dopamine hit or for the feeling that you're searching for, right? And so in order to think clearly, one needs to take care of their, let's call it, their energy. They need to be able to manage their energy through what they expose themselves to. But in a country or in a world where everything in the media is designed to grab your attention, to put you in a fight or flight response, to polarize you so that they have your attention, the sound bite that's taken out of context, the thumbnail that sparks your creativity, right? It's all designed to pull you in a direction. And thinking is one of the skills that we've seen to have lost or don't care to sharpen. And what you're saying, I think, is accurate. It's just my concern is it's easy for people to dismiss because it requires
Yes,
effort. But going back to the responsibility piece, you have to be able to take responsibility for your thinking, or else you're just going to be the tumbleweed that blows in the wind. And
definitely.
that doesn't serve our country. That doesn't serve your family. And if anything, it continues the generational trauma or the bad behaviors that you can't see because you're not creating enough space and time to see them.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. I would say that the Bible talks about that being lukewarm. There's being cold and being hot. Being cold and hot are better than being lukewarm. That means you're just in the center, just placating. Again, you're paralyzed with comfort. You're just, like you've just settled into the basic dopamine hits. You go and work your job all day. You come home and turn on Netflix, and you just eat unhealthy, and you get into this mindset, like you said, where your body is not even able to help you in your thinking process. It
Mm-hmm.
just makes you more aggravated, and you're more tired, and you're more fed up. And this goes back to the instant gratification versus the delayed gratification. For you, I know that you see the results in the gym, right? You're going to the
Yeah.
gym, and if you're expecting to see results in that first day, and then you don't, and you give it up, this goes into the thoughts becoming your habits, becoming your actions and your deeds and your destiny, essentially, which is the Side Edge talks about. And so having that instant gratification mind versus the delayed gratification mind is a big difference, because when I'm having a conversation with someone about these deep philosophical concepts in society, and I have the delayed gratification mindset, knowing that, hey, I'm not here to try to force a situation. I'm not here to force an outcome. I'm here to generally play the field, see what's going on, hear all the sides, do my best to be a mediator, to be that thing, that stands in the center of the chaos to bring the order. When you talk about, God being a governing, operating dynamic, I believe that is what God wants for all of us, is to be in that state of peace, to be able to stand in peace amidst the chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Because, nature, if you look at nature, nature could appear totally chaotic, but isn't it perfectly ordered? I mean, think about these crazy storms and these crazy earthquakes and these crazy volcanoes. And just, I mean, if you look at that, that can be looked at as absolute chaos. Or is that just nature playing itself out and creating the environment that's necessary for the things around it to thrive? So it's the same thing in our minds. It's realizing that there is order amidst all of the chaos, and we need to be that order. We need to
Mm-hmm.
order our own consciousness. We need to collect ourselves to not be victims to our emotions. That's another thing to emotional intelligence. This is something I learned way back in the day when we were talking about personal growth and this and that. I'm sure we had these conversations that you and I always put more value in emotional intelligence over, IQ or just,
Hmm.
regular intelligence of like, I'm a scientist and I can build this thing and I'm smart, if you will. Emotional intelligence and the greatest leaders in our society understood emotional intelligence and knew how to operate people and knew how people operate and knew how to care for people in their organizations, in their communities, because they were able to put themselves in the roles of these people and not react to every single problem in their life as a threat, but as an opportunity to overcome, as an
Yes.
opportunity to gain a lesson, as an opportunity to gain an insight that then you can have more wisdom and carry on. So this actually ties back to the whole David thing. Well, David, his problem was a bunch of wives, and you go to King Solomon, who was the wisest king in the Bible, right? King Solomon, the son of King David. And what did he do? He had 750 wives and 250 concubines. How chaotic is that going to create your kingdom? How much chaos is that going to bring? Because every one of those wives is going to have their own individual needs. They're going to all create their power struggle of who's going to be the son of the next thing. Like you create all of this chaos around you, but you're the wisest king. It's just like, no, the goal of us is to quiet the mind, to piece ourselves back together, to not look at society necessarily as black and white, but to be the yin yang, the center where the yin and yang meet. How can we be perfectly centered and balanced? And that's what we really should focus on. And the thing is, the physical is uh, the expressed reaction of what's going inside of us spiritually. And so that should give us, as people who have the wisdom, that is where the responsibility comes from. The more what wisdom that you obtain, the more knowledge that you obtain, the more responsibility you now have to behave in a more conscious way.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, that is a big burden. So they maybe don't want to seek out the wisdom because then now you're responsible and now you can't go out and sin the way that you used to.
Exactly.
It's the same thing for me. A lot of the things that I was okay with before in my life, I'm not okay with now personally. Not that I would judge someone for making those decisions, but I have a feedback loop in my life. I have enough people around me that create a mirror in my life to reflect back to me on how my decisions are actually affecting my world around me. And so I have that, which I'm very fortunate for, because you need these sounding boards, you need these friendships, and you need these conversations that you and I are having right here to help build that up and to help learn about your decision making process and how you're making these decisions. And are you a reactionary person? Are you the feeder or the receiver of information? Are you the one that's feeding? And like this podcast, this would be a feeding experience. We're feeding information to people to then receive, and hopefully they'll gain some insight to then go out there and feed society and feed each other.
Hmm.
And so you're creating that there's this feeding and receiving experience that's happening. And so it's like, what is society feeding themselves physically and spiritually? And then what are the fruits? What's the outcome of those of the feeding? And you'll see your feedback loop,
Yeah.
and that will then
Yeah.
show you where someone is at. And so you could see the pattern in someone's life of what
Hmm.
is causing all of those things. And for you being a performance coach, that's crucial for you. You have to immediately go into a company, go into a relationship or a person, and you have to ask all of these questions to get an understanding of the field that you're on with this person. How is this person making decisions in their life? And then you can start to piece together, oh, this is why, because you're making these decisions, that's why this outcome is happening. And then these decisions actually create these decisions. And then you're able to dissect someone's mind and then help them perform at a better level. But then you have to then help them shift how they're thinking. You have to help them shift their mindset and to
Hmm.
feed themselves with the good things that are going to lead to the good outcomes that are going to benefit their life.
Right. It's true. It's true. And that wisdom that you're talking about only comes from action. And because we have so much access to information and stimulating information, both good and bad, it's easy to get caught in the information, like the intellectual buzz of like
Yes.
learning
Yes.
something and thinking you know it, but you won't truly know it until you do it. And but in the doing it is when the wisdom comes. And once the wisdom is there, that's where the responsibility is born. And so it's like all these components converge on the action taking. And and so wherever someone else is at in their life, organizing their actions in an intentional way that serves them and the collective, that brings a level of challenge and fulfillment, is whatever that action is, that's the next step. Right. And
Exactly.
usually that comes from a clear vision. That's obviously what you did that has led to you being in the place that you're at, building a beautiful family, a beautiful community, and continuing to let that evolve. All those are conscious choices that are coming from clear, well thought out trains of thought. Right. And you have that infrastructure built. So you're able to move with greater accuracy and greater speed. And it doesn't mean that you're done learning. It just means you continue to build on that strong foundation that you've taken so long to set up. And that's what makes you an effective communicator and someone who can hold multiple ideas. Because you're not intimidated by a new thought, nor are you afraid to entertain it. It's like, okay, there's probably some information that I can extract, or at least better understand someone else, which is only going to help me here and in the future. So
Exactly.
why would I not do this? So yeah, I love it, man. I'm glad we're having this conversation. For as we begin to wind down here, what would you say are some last minute thoughts that may be coming through that you think would be really helpful for whoever's listening to walk away with, having discussed what we've talked about so far?
Absolutely. Going back to responsibility, I would say that our greatest responsibility as a human race is to love one another and to learn how to do that to the best of our abilities and to seek information and knowledge that brings us together again and to realize that nothing is personal in life. Like when somebody is having a bad day, and they come through, let's say you're working somewhere and their bad day comes out onto you, that is not a personal experience. That is not a personal attack. That is I would look at that, look at when somebody gets mad or angry or upset, pause and have a moment of compassion. Don't necessarily, don't react. Like realize that that is not a personal, again, a personal experience. That is an internal conflict that this human before you is going through. And in that moment, the best thing we can do is not to stoke the fire, is not to try to resist, is not to rebel against that person. It is to pause and to breathe and to just listen to the person that's before you and listen to that person's struggle and then do your best to relate. Think about in your life when you went through a similar experience or what that experience could actually feel like if you went through it and to really put yourself in their shoes before you even think about reacting, because 9 times out of 10 the moment that you react it's just gonna not it's gonna cause division,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
is the opposite. I mean, there's enough division in society already. So us as a human race and a society, put love first, and love your neighbor, love one another, have compassion, don't take things personally to the best of your ability. There are going to be times where you do. We're human. This is where sin comes from. Sin means to miss the mark. That's literally what it means. The Greek translation of sin is to miss the mark. And so when you're talking about archery or my ability to adapt and move and hit targets, that comes from the wisdom that I have and the spiritual groundedness that I have. It allows me to hit the target more often. Not to say that I won't miss, and so I would say do your best to not react, learn how to be adaptable, get out of your comfort zones in healthy ways, of course. And you're going to find things in life, you're going to try things out, and maybe it doesn't turn out the way you want, but this is how you learn, this is how you grow. You need to put yourself out there for the opportunity for wisdom to come into your life. And so it's get out of the comfort zone, get off the couch, go and experience new groups of people, go into new organizations, read different spiritual texts, and look at the patterns that connects all of us. Look for the things that connect. Don't look for the things that divide. We have more in common than we do not. We are made in the same image, the same likeness, meaning that we are all one. And so if we can have that compassion every day, look in the mirror, look in the mirrors of all your fellow humans around you, and remember that they're just reflections of the teachings that we need to have in our lives to be more compassionate, to be more loving, to be there for one another, and to take the extra few minutes to say nice things to people as you're walking by them, to smile as you're walking by people, to put the phone down for a second and just look up at all the people around you and be present in society, and do your best when you're online to not hide behind the facade, and to realize that when you're online you have even more responsibility to talk to people with compassion and love, and to remove yourself from situations that may cause division, and realize that if there's no don't try to push things, don't try to push your agenda onto people. Just be the example, be the actions, do, be the verb. And I think that when
Yes.
people find that they will have a much higher quality of life.
I love that, bro. Thank you. Where can people hear more, connect with you? What's the best place?
Yeah. Actually, we have our first what we're calling the Revelation Retreat in October.
Mm, mm.
And I'll actually give everyone here, if anyone wants to do it, we'll give you guys like $1,000 off code or something. But we have that. That's like an actual event that you can come to, in which we talk about the grand unifying theory of everything. And we talk about this unity and this coming together. We talk about the mind and the consciousness and decision making, and how humanity actually works, and how we think and how we come together. So it's going to be a really in-depth spiritual science course in which people understand how spirituality and science actually support one another, that they don't actually discount one another, and that everything around us can be explained, and that God can be explained through science. And so that's one way. And then just Arcadian American Farms, we're on Instagram, we're on all the different social medias and things. But if you want to come and visit the farm, you can just reach out to us there and come spend some time out here and to experience what we're talking about firsthand in motion.
All right. You heard it, guys. Go check them out. Chase, thank you for your time, your mind, your heart, your leadership, your community. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure and a blessing, brother. Thank you for all the work that you're doing and getting the wisdom to the people, and for being a beacon of hope and faith and unity in a time where it's needed most.